The smell of charcoal and pretension hung thick in the evening air as I stood on the deck of my wife's family lakeside property, watching Marta work the crowd like a seasoned politician. 23 years of marriage, and I still couldn't figure out if she was genuinely charismatic or just really good at faking it. "Van, honey, could you grab more beer from the cooler?" Marta called out, her voice dripping with that particular brand of sweetness she reserved for public performances. I was Evan to everyone else, but she'd called me Van since college. Back then, it felt intimate. Now it just felt like another costume she made me wear. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I replied, matching her tone with practiced ease. The annual Harker family cookout was theater, and we all knew our roles. I made my way through the crowd of relatives, co-workers, and hangers-on that populated these gatherings. Marta's advertising agency friends clustered near the outdoor bar, their laughter sharp and competitive. Her family sprawled across the lawn chairs, nursing drinks and grievances in equal measure. "Evan!" Victoria, Marta's older sister, intercepted me near the cooler. At 50, she still dressed like she was competing for attention at a college party. "How's the finance world treating you?" "Same as always, Victoria. Numbers don't lie, unlike most people." I popped open a beer and handed it to her, keeping my smile neutral. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, you're such a cynic." "That's probably why Marta needs Jake around the office so much. A little optimism, you know? Jake Turnbull. Marta's so-called work husband, a 38-year-old creative director with the kind of confidence that only comes from never facing real consequences. He'd been hovering around Marta all evening, bringing her drinks, laughing too loudly at her jokes, touching her arm just a beat too long. "Jake's certainly enthusiastic," I said, watching him across the yard as he gestured animatedly while telling some story to Marta's mother. "He's good for her career," Victoria continued, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite identify. "You know how competitive advertising is. She needs someone who really understands her ambitions." There it was, the implication hanging in the air like smoke from the grill. I'd heard variations of this theme for months now. Jake gets her. Jake supports her dreams. Jake would never hold her back like some people. "I'm sure he does," I said, taking a long drink of my beer. The conversation drifted to safer topics, but I found myself watching the dynamics around me with new eyes. Marta's friends from the agency had formed their usual circle near the pool, their voices carrying across the water. "I mean, if you're going to have an affair, at least make sure it advances your career," one of them was saying, a blonde named Stephanie who'd never liked me. "Right? Like, what's the point of risking everything for some random guy?" Another chimed in. "At least make it your boss or something." Marta's laugh rose above the others. "Please, if I was going to cheat on Van, it wouldn't be for love. It'd be for leverage." The group erupted in giggles, but I caught the edge in Marta's voice. The calculation. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, talking about infidelity like a business strategy. "What about you, Marta?" Stephanie pressed. "If you had to pick someone from work?" "Oh, that's easy," Marta said, her voice carrying clearly across the water. "Jake's got connections I need. Plus, Van's he's my stepping stone, you know? Stable, reliable, boring. But Jake could actually take me places." The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. I stood frozen by the cooler, beer halfway to my lips, as my wife casually discussed using me as a launching pad for her next chapter. "Evan?" My son Ross appeared beside me, his 22-year-old face creased with concern. "You okay, Dad? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, ruffling his dark hair. "Just thinking about work stuff, kiddo. Nothing important." But it was important. It was everything, actually. 23 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams, and inside jokes and quiet Sunday mornings, all reduced to a stepping stone, a means to an end. I grabbed another beer and made my way back toward the house, needing space to process what I'd heard. But as I passed the group by the pool, I couldn't resist stopping. Ladies, I said, raising my beer in a mock toast. Sounds like you're having quite the philosophical discussion about relationships and career advancement. The circle went quiet, faces flushing with embarrassment or defiance. Marta's eyes narrowed, trying to gauge how much I'd overheard. Just girl talk, honey, she said carefully. Ah, girl talk, I nodded sagely. Well, here's to stepping stones, then. May they always know their place. I took a long drink, maintaining eye contact with my wife as understanding dawned in her expression. Then I set the beer down on the nearest table and walked into the house. The guest bathroom mirror reflected a face I barely recognized. 49 years old, graying at the temples, lines around the eyes that spoke of too many late nights and early mornings. When had I become invisible? When had I stopped being a husband and become just infrastructure? My phone buzzed with a text from Mike, my best friend since high school. How's the annual circus? Need rescue? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, rain check. I think the show's just getting started. When I emerged from the bathroom, the party was winding down. Guests were saying their goodbyes, gathering purses and leftover food. Jake was helping Marta clean up, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of practiced intimacy. Great party, as always, Jake said to me as he carried a tray of glasses past. Marta really knows how to bring people together. She certainly does, I agreed. She's got a real talent for networking. If he caught the edge in my voice, he didn't show it. Just flashed that confident smile and continued toward the kitchen. I found Marta loading the dishwasher, her movements sharp and efficient. She looked up when I entered, her expression guarded. We need to talk, she said quietly. Do we? I leaned against the counter, studying her face. Still beautiful at 47, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But there was something harder in her eyes now, something calculating that hadn't been there before. What you heard out there? What I heard, I interrupted, was my wife explaining to her friends how she's been using me as a stepping stone while planning her next career move. Did I miss anything important? Her jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? Because it sounded pretty clear to me. Van's boring, Van's stable, Van's just something to step on while reaching for Jake. Don't be dramatic, Evan. We were just talking. Hypothetically. Hypothetically. I nodded slowly. Like how you and Jake are hypothetically working late 3 nights a week. Hypothetically going to all those weekend conferences together. Hypothetically sharing hotel rooms to save the company money. The color drained from her face. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've already made your choice. You're just waiting for the right moment to make it official. Evan, please. Can we talk about this tomorrow, when we've both had time to cool down? I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd shared half my life with, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. More focused. You know what, Marta? You're right. Let's talk tomorrow. I kissed her forehead gently, the same way I had every night for 23 years, and walked upstairs to our bedroom. But instead of getting ready for bed, I pulled out a suitcase and began to pack. If I was just a stepping stone, it was time to remove myself from the path. The Marriott on 5th Street wasn't much to look at, but it had 2 things going for it. They took cash, and they didn't ask questions. I'd checked in under my middle name, paid for a week up front, and settled into the kind of anonymous existence I hadn't experienced since college. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since Marta found my note that morning. Simple and to the point. Gone to think. Don't wait up. Your stepping stone. I'd turned the phone off after the 15th call. The note I'd left with the divorce papers was even simpler. Since I'm apparently just infrastructure in your life plan, I'm removing myself from the blueprint. My lawyer will be in touch. 24 hours later, I was sitting in a diner across town, nursing my third cup of coffee and watching the world go by through rain-streaked windows. It was liberating, in a terrifying sort of way. For the first time in decades, nobody knew where I was or what I was supposed to be doing. Rough night? The waitress, a woman about my age with kind eyes and tired feet, refilled my cup without being asked. Rough marriage, I said. But the night's looking up. She smiled sympathetically and moved on to the next table. I pulled out a burner phone I'd bought that morning and dialed Mike's number. Jesus Christ, Van. Where the hell are you? Marta's been calling everyone, thinks you've been kidnapped or had a breakdown or something. I'm fine, Mike. Better than fine, actually. I'm free. Free? What are you talking about? And why are you calling from a number I don't recognize? Because I don't want to be found. Not yet, anyway. I need you to do me a favor. Okay, but first you need to tell me what's going on. Your wife is losing her mind. Your kids are worried sick. My wife, I interrupted, has been planning to leave me for her coworker. She just hadn't figured out the timing yet. I saved her the trouble. Silence on the other end of the line. Mike had been a cop for 20 years before retiring. He knew how to read between the lines. You sure about this, Van? I heard her say it, Mike. To her friends. I'm just a stepping stone to her next chapter. So I'm stepping out of the story. Shit. Okay, what do you need? Information. I want to know everything about Jake Turnbull. Where he lives, what he drives, who he's connected to. And I want to know about Marta's activities. Where she goes, who she sees, what she's telling people about my disappearance. Van, it sounds like a man who's tired of being played for a fool. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, Mike. Just keep your eyes open. Can you do that for me? Another pause. Yeah, I can do that. But Van, don't do anything stupid, okay? Whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything, I lied smoothly. I just want to understand the full scope of what I'm dealing with before I make any permanent decisions. After I hung up, I sat back in the booth and considered my options. I could file for divorce, split everything down the middle, and move on with my life. Clean, simple, civilized. Or I could make sure that Marta and Jake understood exactly what it felt like to be used and discarded. The rain had stopped by the time I left the diner. I drove across town to the upscale neighborhood where Jake lived, a converted warehouse district full of overpriced lofts and trendy restaurants. His building had a parking garage with decent security, but nothing that couldn't be bypassed with a little patience and the right tools. I wasn't planning to do anything. Not yet. I was just gathering intelligence. Jake's silver BMW sat in spot 47, pristine and polished. The kind of car that screamed, "Look at me," to anyone within a 3-block radius. I took note of the license plate, the building layout, the security camera's blind spots. Information was power. And for the first time in years, I was going to be the one holding the cards. My phone, the real one, buzzed with a text from my daughter Amelia. Dad, please call. Mom's freaking out and I don't know what's happening. I stared at the message for a long moment, guilt twisting in my chest. Ross and Amelia didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of their parents' imploding marriage. But they also deserved to know the truth about who their mother really was. I typed back, "I'm safe, sweetheart. Just need some time to think. This isn't about you or Ross. I love you both." Her response came immediately. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Smart girl. Always had been. Got that from her mother, unfortunately. Probably. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Can I see you? I don't care what Mom says. I smiled despite everything. Soon. I promise. Just give me a few more days to sort things out. Okay. But Dad, whatever happened, I'm on your side. That almost broke me. I turned off the phone and drove back to the hotel, where I spent the rest of the evening researching everything I could find about Jake Turnbull's life, career, and connections. By midnight, I had a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Jake wasn't just Marta's lover, he was her ticket to the big leagues. His father owned 3 major advertising firms on the East Coast. His ex-girlfriend was a VP at a Fortune 500 company. His social media was full of industry events, networking parties, and the kind of connections that could make or break a career in advertising. Marta hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd been trading up. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I hadn't done in 5 years. Then I drove to the coffee shop across from Marta's office building and waited. She arrived at 8:30, looking harried and exhausted. Jake pulled up 10 minutes later, and I watched them meet in the lobby through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The conversation looked intense, urgent. Marta kept glancing around like she expected me to materialize out of thin air. They disappeared into the elevator together, and I settled in to wait some more. This was the part of surveillance that Mike had always complained about during his cop days, the endless hours of watching and waiting. But I found it oddly soothing. For the first time in months, I had a clear purpose, a goal that was entirely my own. At 11:45, they emerged together and walked to Jake's BMW. I followed at a distance as they drove to an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place that charged $30 for a salad and called it artisanal. I parked across the street and watched them through the restaurant's windows. They sat close together, Marta's hand resting on Jake's arm as they talked. She was animated, gesturing emphatically, while he nodded and smiled with the easy confidence of a man who'd never had to worry about consequences. My phone buzzed with a call from Victoria. Interesting. Evan? Thank God. Where are you? Marta's been worried sick. Has she? That's touching. What can I do for you, Victoria? Look, I know things have been tense between you and Marta lately, but running away isn't going to solve anything. Running away? I laughed. Is that what she's calling it? Interesting spin. She told me about the fight at the Cookout, about the things she said. She feels terrible, Evan. She was just talking, you know? Girls talk. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything, Victoria. But I appreciate you reaching out. Really. It's good to know where everyone stands. Where I stand. Evan, I'm trying to help here. Marta made a mistake, but Marta made a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice. And now I'm making mine. I hung up and watched my wife laugh at something Jake had said, her face bright with the kind of joy I hadn't seen in years. At least not directed at me. My phone rang again, Mike this time. I've got some information for you, he said without preamble. You're not going to like it. Try me. Jake's been bragging to his buddies at the gym about his older woman, says she's going to leave her husband as soon as she gets the promotion she's angling for. Apparently, they've been planning this for months. The words hit like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting something like this. Months? At least 6, from what I could gather. There's more, Van. Jake's been telling people that Marta's husband is some boring finance guy who doesn't appreciate what he has. Says he's doing you a favor by taking her off your hands. I closed my eyes, feeling the last vestiges of doubt evaporate. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a campaign, carefully planned and executed. Thanks, Mike. I owe you. Van, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking it's time to level the playing field. I hung up and started the car. Phase 1 of my education was complete. Now it was time to start working on my thesis. 3 days into my new life as a ghost, I'd established a routine that would have impressed my old college sociology professor. Morning surveillance at the coffee shop across from Marta's office. Afternoon intelligence gathering at various locations around the city. Evening planning sessions in my hotel room, mapping out connections and vulnerabilities like a general preparing for war. The picture that emerged was both clearer and more devastating than I'd imagined. Marta and Jake weren't just having an affair, they were building an empire, He'd been feeding her inside information about upcoming accounts, introducing her to his father's contacts, positioning her for a move to one of his family's East Coast firms. The promotion she'd been chasing wasn't just about advancing her career at her current agency. It was about proving she was worthy of joining the Turnbull advertising dynasty. And I was the dead weight she needed to shed before making her grand entrance into high society. "You look like a man with a plan," Mike said, sliding into the booth across from me at the diner where I'd been spending my evenings. "Should I be worried?" "Depends. How do you feel about justice?" "I'm generally in favor of it, but I'm also generally opposed to my friends ending up in jail." I smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness I'd felt in weeks. "Relax, Mike. Everything I'm planning is completely legal, morally questionable perhaps, but well within the bounds of the law. That's what worries me. You were always too smart for your own good. Not smart enough, apparently. Otherwise, I would have seen this coming years ago." Mike studied my face across the table. "You really think this has been going on for years?" "I think Marta's been planning her exit strategy for longer than either of us realizes. Jake might be her current vehicle, but he's not her first. Remember Brad from her yoga class? The one she was always having coffee with? Or David, the client who needed so many evening meetings? I thought I was being paranoid, but now you think you were being naive. Now I know I was being used." The waitress refilled our coffee cups, and I pulled out a manila folder filled with photos, documents, and handwritten notes. "Jake Turnbull, 38, creative director at Morrison & Associates, heir to the Turnbull advertising fortune," I began, laying out photos like a detective presenting evidence. "Lives alone in a converted warehouse loft, drives a BMW that costs more than most people make in a year, and has never faced a real consequence in his entire privileged life. Van? He's been telling his gym buddies that he's doing me a favor by taking Marta off my hands. Says I'm too boring to appreciate what I have. Apparently, I should be grateful that a real man is willing to show her what she's been missing." Mike winced. Jesus. It gets better. According to his social media posts, he's been documenting their relationship for months. Subtle stuff, pictures of 2 wine glasses, restaurant check-ins when I thought she was working late, even a few shots of her jewelry that I bought for our anniversary. He's been treating my marriage like his personal trophy collection. I spread out more photos, screenshots from Instagram and Facebook that painted a picture of systematic humiliation. "This one's my favorite," I said, pointing to a photo of 2 coffee cups on Jake's kitchen counter. "Posted at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday 3 weeks ago. I remember that morning because Marta told me she had an early client breakfast. Turns out she did, just not the kind I was thinking of." "Okay, so they're scum. What are you planning to do about it?" I leaned back in the booth, considering my words carefully. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want, Mike. Freedom. From me, from consequences, from the boring stability that's been holding them back. I'm going to set them free to face the world on their own terms." That sounds ominous. It should. Because when I'm done, they're going to understand exactly what they've lost. And more importantly, everyone they care about is going to understand what kind of people they really are. Mike was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence spread across the table. "You know there's no coming back from this, right? Whatever you're planning, once you pull the trigger, your marriage is over. Permanently." My marriage was over the moment Marta decided I was just a stepping stone. I'm just making it official. And the kids? That was the question that had been keeping me awake at night. Ross and Amelia didn't deserve to have their family destroyed by their parents' failures, but they also deserved to know the truth about who their mother really was. The kids will understand eventually. They're smart, Mike. They'll see through Marta's version of events once the facts come out. If you say so. But Van, promise me you'll think about this one more time before you do anything irreversible. 23 years of marriage is a long time to throw away. I'm not throwing it away, I said quietly. Marta already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. After Mike left, I sat alone in the booth, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. Part of me, a small, desperate part, wanted to believe there was still a chance for reconciliation. That maybe if I confronted her with what I knew, she'd come to her senses and choose our family over her ambitions. But I'd seen the look in her eyes at that restaurant, the pure joy she felt when she was with Jake. The way she came alive in his presence in a way she hadn't with me in years. She'd already made her choice. Now it was time to make mine. I gathered up the photos and documents, slipped them back into the folder, and walked out into the night. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad? It's Ross. I got your new number from Amelia. Can we meet? I need to talk to you about Mom. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. My son, my quiet, thoughtful boy who'd inherited my tendency to observe before acting. What had he seen? What did he know? I typed back, tomorrow. 2 p.m. The park by the lake, where I taught you to fish. Come alone. His response was immediate. I'll be there. As I drove back to the hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The careful distance I'd maintained, the clinical approach to gathering evidence, all of it was about to become personal again. But maybe that was what I needed. Maybe it was time to stop being the invisible man in my own life and start fighting for what mattered, even if it meant burning everything else to the ground. Ross was already waiting when I arrived at the park, sitting on the same bench where I'd taught him to tie fishing knots 15 years ago. At 22, he looked more like me than ever. Same dark hair, same tendency to think before speaking, same way of watching the world with careful, analytical eyes. Dad. He stood up as I approached, and I was struck by how tall he'd gotten. When had my little boy become a man? Hey, kiddo. I pulled him into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something else. Worry, maybe. Fear. We sat down together, the lake stretching out before us like a mirror reflecting the gray October sky. Mom's been crying for 3 days, he said without preamble. She won't eat, won't sleep. She keeps calling your office, your friends, anyone who might know where you are. And what do you think about that? Ross was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I think she's scared. But not for the reasons she's telling everyone. Smart boy. What reasons do you think she has? I think she's scared because she knows why you left. And I think she's scared because she knows you're not coming back. I studied his profile, seeing echoes of the serious child he'd been. What makes you say that? Because I've been watching Dad. For months now. The late nights, the weekend work trips, the way she lights up when Jake calls. I'm not stupid. The words hit me like a physical blow. My son, my quiet, observant son, had been carrying this knowledge alone, watching his family disintegrate from the inside. Ross, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to. Don't apologize for her choices, he said firmly. That's what you always do, Dad. You apologize for everyone else's behavior, take responsibility for everyone else's mistakes, but this isn't your fault. It's not that simple, isn't it? He turned to face me fully, and I saw anger burning in his eyes. She's cheating on you, Dad. With that smug asshole from her office. Everyone knows it except you, and now I'm starting to think you knew it too. You just didn't want to admit it. The accusation stung because it was partially true. I had known, on some level. The signs had been there for months, maybe longer. I'd just chosen to ignore them, to make excuses, to pretend everything was fine because facing the truth was too painful. You're right, I said quietly. I did know. I hoped I was wrong. So what are you going to do about it? I looked at my son, this young man who'd inherited my analytical mind, but not my tendency toward passive acceptance. and made a decision. I'm going to make sure she understands the consequences of her choices. Good. The vehemence in his voice surprised me. She deserves whatever's coming to her. Ross. No, Dad. I'm tired of pretending everything's okay. I'm tired of watching her treat you like you're invisible while she parades around with her boyfriend. I'm tired of listening to her friends make jokes about what a pushover you are. Her friends said that? At the cookout. When you went inside. They were laughing about how clueless you were, how easy it would be to fool you, and Mom she just laughed along with them. The image of my wife laughing at my expense with her friends felt like a knife between the ribs. But it also crystallized something inside me, hardened my resolve in a way that all the surveillance and evidence gathering hadn't managed to do. What about Amelia? How is she handling all this? She's furious. At Mom, at the situation, at you for disappearing without explaining anything. She thinks you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Maybe I am, but if so, it's long overdue. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching ducks paddle across the lake's surface. Finally, Ross spoke again. What do you need from me? Nothing. This isn't your fight, son. The hell it isn't. She's my mother, but you're my dad. And what she's doing to you, to our family, it's not right. I felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. Ross, I don't want you to get caught in the middle of this. I'm already in the middle of it. We all are. The question is whether we're going to pretend everything's fine while she destroys our family, or whether we're going to fight back. Fighting back could get ugly. Really ugly. Then we'll get ugly. He stood up, his jaw set with determination I recognized from looking in the mirror. Just tell me what you need. That evening, I sat in my hotel room, staring at the evidence I'd accumulated over the past week. Photos, documents, screenshots, witness statements, enough to paint a clear picture of Marta's betrayal. But Ross's words had changed something fundamental about my approach. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. About making sure that actions had consequences, that people couldn't just use and discard others without facing the fallout. My phone rang. Victoria. Evan, we need to talk. Do we? I thought we covered everything the other day. Not over the phone, in person. There are things you need to know about Marta, about Jake, about what's really been going on. Interesting. What kind of things? The kind that might change how you're thinking about handling this situation. Meet me at Murphy's Bar on 7th Street. 1 hour. She hung up before I could respond. Murphy's was the kind of dive bar that attracted people who wanted to have conversations without being overheard. Victoria was already there when I arrived, nursing a whiskey and looking older than her 50 years. You look terrible, she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. Divorce will do that to you. What did you want to talk about? She took a long drink, gathering her courage. I need to tell you something about the cookout. About what happened before you overheard Marta talking to her friends. I'm listening. I may have encouraged that conversation, asked some leading questions, steered the topic toward infidelity and career advancement. I stared at her, processing this admission. Why? Because I wanted you to know the truth. About what she's been doing, about what she's been planning. I've been watching her destroy your marriage for months, and I couldn't stand it anymore. So you manipulated the situation to force a confrontation. I gave you the information you needed to make an informed decision about your life. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you orchestrated the entire thing. Victoria's face flushed red. I didn't make her say those things, Evan. I didn't make her cheat on you or plan to leave you for Jake. I just made sure you found out about it. Why? What do you get out of destroying your sister's marriage? She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her whiskey like it might contain answers. Because she destroyed mine first. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, when Tom and I were having problems, Marta knew I was trying to work things out, knew how much my marriage meant to me, but she couldn't stand the idea that I might be happy while she was stuck in what she called a boring suburban prison. Victoria. She seduced him, Evan, my husband, at my birthday party, in my own house, and when I confronted her about it, she told me I should be grateful. That Tom was obviously unhappy with me and she was just helping him figure out what he really wanted. The pieces clicked into place. Victoria's bitterness, her pointed comments about Marta needing Jake for her career, her sudden concern for my welfare. So this is about revenge. This is about justice. Marta thinks she can use people and throw them away without consequences. She thinks her charm and ambition give her the right to destroy other people's lives for her own benefit. Well, now it's her turn to find out what that feels like. I leaned back in the booth, reassessing everything I thought I knew about the situation. What else haven't you told me? Jake's not her first affair, or her second. She's been cheating on you for years, Evan. Different men, different reasons, but always with the same justification. She deserves better than what she has. The words should have hurt more than they did. But I found myself feeling oddly detached, like Victoria was describing someone else's life. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want to help you destroy her. The way she destroyed me, the way she's destroyed everyone who's ever trusted her. I want her to lose everything. Her marriage, her career, her reputation, her precious Jake. I want her to know what it feels like to be completely alone. I studied Victoria's face, seeing the pain and rage that had been festering for 3 years. She was offering me an alliance, a partnership in revenge. All I had to do was say yes. What did you have in mind? She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it looked genuine. I'm so glad you asked. The Morrison and Associates annual client appreciation party was always held at the Riverside Country Club, a sprawling testament to old money and older connections. Marta had been talking about it for weeks before I disappeared, planning her outfit, strategizing about which clients to schmooze, positioning herself for maximum visibility. She had no idea it was about to become the stage for her downfall. You sure about this? Mike asked as we sat in his car across from the country club's entrance. Once we walk in there, there's no taking it back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Victoria had outdone herself with the planning. Jake's ex-girlfriend Sarah would be there. She'd received an anonymous invitation along with copies of Jake's social media posts documenting his relationship with Marta. Jake's father would be attending, unaware that his son had been conducting an affair with a married woman while using company resources to advance her career. Most importantly, Marta's boss and the senior partners would all be present to witness what Victoria had dubbed the unveiling. Ross and Amelia are in position? I asked, checking my phone one more time. They're at the hotel with the laptop, ready to start the slideshow on your signal, Mike confirmed. Though I still think involving your kids in this is a bad idea. They insisted. And honestly, they deserve to see their mother face consequences for what she's done to our family. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Victoria had convinced Marta that I was planning to crash the party and cause a scene, so Marta had arranged for extra security and positioned herself near the back exit for a quick escape if necessary. What she didn't know was that the security were actually friends of Mike's from the police force, and they were there to make sure she couldn't leave until the show was over. At exactly 8:30 p.m., I walked through the front doors of the Riverside Country Club, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that contained 3 years of evidence documenting my wife's infidelity. The party was in full swing, advertising executives and their clients mingling over cocktails and canapes. I spotted Marta immediately. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our 20th anniversary, laughing at something Jake was whispering in her ear. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, tapping a knife against a champagne glass until the room fell silent. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I have a few things I'd like to share with you about the nature of partnership and loyalty in business. Marta's face went white as she recognized my voice. Jake stepped protectively in front of her, his chest puffed out like a rooster defending his territory. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said loudly. "This is a private event." "Oh, I know exactly what kind of event this is, Jake. In fact, I have some visual aids that I think everyone will find very illuminating." I nodded toward the back of the room, where Mike had positioned himself near the audio-visual equipment. The lights dimmed, and the large screen that had been displaying the Morrison and Associates logo flickered to life with a new image. It was a screenshot of Jake's Instagram account, showing a photo of 2 wine glasses on a restaurant table. The caption read, "Date night with my favorite older woman. Some things are worth the wait." A murmur went through the crowd as people began to understand what they were seeing. "This was posted 6 months ago," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Around the same time, my wife Marta started working late 3 nights a week on what she called special projects. The next slide showed a series of text messages between Marta and Jake, discussing hotel reservations and alibi stories. Victoria had outdone herself getting access to Marta's phone records. "Jake, what is this?" The voice came from an older man near the front of the room, Jake's father, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Dad, I can explain. Can you? Because it looks like you've been conducting an affair with a married woman while representing our family's company." The slides continued, each one more damaging than the last. Photos of Marta and Jake at restaurants when she'd told me she was working. Credit card receipts for hotel rooms charged to the company account. Screenshots of Jake's conversations with his gym buddies, bragging about his conquest and mocking me as a clueless suburban drone. "The thing about adultery," I said conversationally, "is that it's rarely just about intimacy. It's about power, about using people, about taking what you want without regard for the consequences. My wife didn't just cheat on me. She systematically destroyed our marriage while planning her exit strategy." Marta finally found her voice. "Evan, stop this, please. You're humiliating yourself." "Am I?" "Because from where I'm standing, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." The final slide appeared on screen, a photo of Marta and Jake in bed together, taken from Jake's social media account. The caption read, "When you find someone who appreciates your ambition, or upgrade, worth it." The room erupted in shocked whispers and uncomfortable laughter. I saw Marta's boss shaking his head in disgust, while Jake's father looked like he was ready to disown his son on the spot. "Now," I said, setting down my champagne glass, "I have one more surprise for the happy couple." Mike wheeled out a large cake on a serving cart, Victoria's final touch. The frosting was decorated with a photo of Marta and Jake, and the message, "Congratulations on your promotion to single life." "Marta, Jake, I wanted to thank you both publicly for teaching me such valuable lessons about loyalty, trust, and the importance of knowing your worth. Thanks to you, I've learned that I deserve better than being someone's stepping stone." I turned to address the room one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Morrison and Associates' newest power couple, assuming they still have jobs tomorrow. Please, enjoy the cake. It's the least I can do after 23 years of marriage." The aftermath was everything I'd hoped for, and more. Jake's father fired him on the spot and threatened to sue Morrison and Associates for allowing company resources to be used for personal affairs. Marta's boss announced that she would be facing disciplinary action pending a full investigation. Several clients approached me to express their disgust at the unprofessional behavior they'd witnessed. But the most satisfying moment came when I was walking toward the exit and felt a hand grab my arm. I turned to find Marta, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered. "How could you destroy everything I've worked for?" I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for half my life, who had systematically betrayed and humiliated me while planning her escape, and felt nothing but pity. I didn't destroy anything, Marta. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd already done. But my career, my reputation, should have been considerations before you decided to use me as a stepping stone. Actions have consequences. You taught me that. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for some sign of the man who used to apologize for her behavior and make excuses for her choices. I don't know who you are anymore, she said finally. I'm someone who knows his worth, I replied. Something I should have figured out a long time ago. As I walked out of the Riverside Country Club, I felt my phone buzz with messages from Ross and Amelia. Dad, you were amazing. So proud of you. She got exactly what she deserved. Mike was waiting by his car, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Well, that was something. How do you feel? I considered the question as we drove away from the country club, leaving behind the wreckage of my old life and the woman who had tried to use me as a stepping stone to her dreams. Free, I said finally. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, reading about Morrison and Associates' bankruptcy filing in the business section of the newspaper. The scandal had destroyed the agency's reputation, cost them several major clients, and led to a federal investigation into their business practices. Marta had moved back in with her mother after losing her job and being blacklisted from the advertising industry. Jake was working at a car dealership in another state, his trust fund cut off and his family connections severed. Victoria had gotten her revenge, but she'd also found something else: peace. We'd become unlikely friends, bonded by our shared experience of being betrayed by someone we trusted. Ross and Amelia visited every weekend, proud of their father for finally standing up for himself. They'd seen their mother's true nature exposed, and while it had been painful, it had also been necessary. As for me, I'd learned that sometimes the only way to stop being a stepping stone is to step out of the path entirely. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim anymore. My phone rang, a call from a headhunter about a senior position at a competing firm. Apparently, my reputation for integrity and my spectacular exit from my marriage had made me something of a legend in business circles. Evan Harker speaking, I answered, smiling as I looked out the window at the city spread below me. Mr. Harker, I have an opportunity that I think might interest you. As I listened to the offer, more money, better benefits, a chance to build something new from the ground up, I realized that Marta had been right about one thing. I had been a stepping stone. The difference was, now I was stepping up instead of being stepped on.